Our first date was many years ago, but I still remember how awkward and silly and wonderful it all was. We were both living up in Yellowknife, and it was a cold evening in May. We went to the Taste of Saigon, and it was still early in the evening before the dinner rush. And we got ourselves some food, and we sat down at a table towards the back corner. And I remember noticing the other people in the restaurant. Now, Yellowknife is a small town, and everybody knows everybody, which meant we were definitely keeping an eye out to see who was looking at us. Because in a small town, well, people like to talk. And so by going out to dinner, we were definitely giving them something to talk about. On one hand, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. It was nothing. It was just dinner and it was just us being cute. And on the other hand, it was everything because I really liked him. And it was hard to admit for a while, but I really wanted the relationship to work. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Forever Love podcast. I'm your relationship coach and host, Lily Mtongwiza, and today I want to talk about first dates because this topic apparently can be quite controversial. Who should you go on a first date with? What is a first date? And what is the proper etiquette and all of that? So let's dive into it and really get to a place where you can go on a first date and enjoy it and feel good about it and not have your mind wandering and wondering and questioning everything. I want you to be able to show up for your next date, whether it's your first or one in a series of many. But either way, I want you to show up with calm, joyful confidence. Confidence that you're in the right place at the right time, that you're making a good decision for yourself and for your future. Now, to start with, we have to understand what is a first date. Now, I believe that dating should remain casual. And I mean really casual, no strings attached. I believe that relationship building really should be reserved for courtship, when the two of you are on board and headed towards the same direction of a Christ-centered marriage. But dating, it should be fun, it should be casual, it should be no strings attached, and it should be an opportunity for you to practice love for yourself, love for him, and love for the situation. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of all of it today. But first, I want to start out by saying this. If you haven't already signed up for the free relationship starter course, I want you to do that now. Pause the podcast right here and go to proverbs2426.com/start because that free course is going to help you really understand where to start your dating and relationship journey from. I want you to start off on solid ground, rooted in your identity in Christ. And I want you to be able to show up for your first date and every other date you ever go on from a place of confidence and giving. A lot of times we tend to show up for a relationship asking, what am I going to get out of this? And I don't think that's the right way to do it. I want you to show up from a place of abundance where you have more than enough to give, and nothing that happens during that first date can take anything away from you. So go over to proverbs2426.com and get started today. It is a 3-part program that you will get access to over the next 3 days, and I want you to take every lesson and really dive into it. Each lesson comes with a worksheet that you can use to really understand and go deeper in your own relationship with yourself and with God so that you can show up for your relationship with somebody else from a place of wholeness and integrity and love. If that sounds good to you, and I know it does, go over to proverbs2426.com/start and begin today. first dates. Let's start out by lowering your expectations. And I'm saying this in a funny way, so stick with me. I want you to lower your expectations in the sense that a first date isn't supposed to make you feel all warm and fuzzy, and it's not supposed to be this perfect moment where the stars align and everything comes together and it's just this amazing experience. I want you to lower your expectations on how a first date is going to make you feel, because the reality is most first dates are awkward. They're weird. They're just uncomfortable. Because a first date, above and beyond everything else, is a moment of vulnerability. Yes, it can be special, and yes, it can be sweet and delightful and everything else. But mostly, if you're showing up with the intention of getting to know somebody and letting them see who you are, it's going to be uncomfortable because it's vulnerable. So I don't want you to be confused when you show up and you feel weird. It's not necessarily because he's a weirdo or he's making you feel weird. It's more likely because this is a new experience for you. And anytime we do something for the first time, even if you're a seasoned single person who has been on many, many dates, the first one with a new person is always going to be a little bit uncomfortable for whatever reason. So let it be awkward. Let it be weird. Let it be whatever it is. That allows you to really pay attention to what is actually happening. And from that place of allowing the first date to be whatever it is, you can really pay attention to the important things, like if there are any red flags. Red flags are often overlooked because we're too caught up in trying to make our first date feel special, feel perfect, feel whatever your expectation of what a first date should feel like. So I want you to allow the first date to be what it is and then pay attention to what's really going on. This is a subtle difference, but it makes a world of difference. I want you to pay attention to two things. First, I want you to focus on listening. Listen to what the other person is really saying. Start asking questions. Allow them to talk and talk and talk. First of all, most people don't get undivided attention these days. We are so distracted by everything that it is an honor and a gift to give somebody your undivided attention. And when you're doing this, you are really paying attention to warning signs and to really detect what you know in your heart and core and what the Holy Spirit and that still small voice inside of you might be saying is to pay attention to your own body language as you're listening to the other person. Pay attention to whether you naturally lean in or you kind of shrink back and close off a little bit. See what it's like to go back and forth between the two and which one feels more natural to you based on the other person's behavior. See if it feels comfortable and safe to lean in, or see if you have a strong need to kind of withdraw and close yourself off and protect yourself. These are subtle clues that you are giving to yourself and to those around you that you want to be aware of. I want you to show up for first dates with a desire to become more aware of who you are in that situation and pay attention to who the other person is being in that situation as well. So, the first thing we're going to do is show up with the intention to listen. Listen more than you talk. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we want to use our ears and lips in that order and in that ratio because it'll help you to really see who that other person is without revealing too much about yourself. So you're still protecting yourself, and then you can really answer questions from a place of wisdom and integrity. The second thing I want you to do is really focus on showing up with love. Now, a lot of people go on a date to fall in love, and I think that's a bad idea. I think that you should show up with the intention to love the person in front of you, no matter who they are. And I want you to show up for everyone in your life this way. But first, I want you to practice and be in the habit of loving yourself first. I do not want you to go and love somebody else at your own expense. That's when we undermine our own values. That's when we fail to maintain good boundaries. That's when we get into situations that lead to regret and compromise. But if you will show up from a place of love for yourself and then show up with the intention to love the other person, it's not going to lead to a dangerous situation. Now, there are people who will say, but Lily, what if you fall in love with this guy and he's not the right one for you? Well, that's a great question. But the thing is, if you're not prepared to let go of a relationship that is not good for you and doesn't bring glory and honor to God, then you're really not ready to date yet. In fact, if that's you, I'd recommend you take a step back and get really clear on why you're dating and what you're doing. Are you pursuing a Christ-centered marriage, or are you trying to avoid loneliness? Are you trying to avoid some negative emotion in your life? And are you trying to use somebody to make yourself feel better? Because it is easy to get ahead of yourself and fall in love with somebody who's not a good match for you when you're trying to get something. But if you know that you're only going to continue this relationship if it's good for you and if it honors God, then you're in a place where you can relax and enjoy the moment for what it is and go home and pray about it and move forward with confidence. Because a date is just a date. I think we get into trouble when we start to blur the lines and we overly commit during these really early stages of a relationship. In fact, I would not even call a first date a relationship. It is just a date. The first date, the second date, even the third date is just a date. Only when you enter into the phase of courtship, where you're talking about commitment and what your intentions are moving forward. And if you and this person want matches, do you want the same things? Are you headed in the same direction? Then and only then can we start to talk about this being a relationship, a romantic relationship. Prior to that, it's just being cute. It's just getting to know one another. It's nothing yet. So don't put too much value in a date as any kind of relationship. It's just a date. And that is why I don't believe it's a sin to date somebody who's not a Christian. It's just a date. A date is not a yoke. It's not a relationship. It's not a commitment. It is just a date. So go ahead and free yourself to show up with the intention of learning more about yourself, learning more about other people, learning how to set boundaries, learning how to stand up for yourself, learning how to do this thing, because it's a skill and it takes practice. And it's good for you to experience all of the awkwardness when the stakes are really low. Because if he's not a Christian, you know you're not going to marry this guy anyways. So you can allow it to be what it is and just get the practice in at a very low stakes level. So I hope that you'll consider this. Now, if you're somebody who does not want to date anybody who is not a Christian, go for it. Great. By all means, do that. But don't condemn yourself or others for a sin you haven't committed or for taking things a little less seriously. You might be an important part of their relationship with Christ. And when you assume that people who claim to be Christians are somehow going to be more suitable for you, you tend to overlook some red flags. So just be aware of this. be aware that a date is just a date and it doesn't mean anything. Don't imagine yourself getting married to this guy. Don't start dreaming up wedding dresses or wondering what your babies are going to look like. Again, it's just a date. Let it be what it is. And when it turns into something else, be prepared to move forward with that decision. Now, I also believe that it's very important to date deliberately. Ultimately, you're dating with the intention of pursuing a Christ-centered marriage. So that means filtering out people who are not in alignment with your desire to walk with Christ throughout this life and spend eternity with Him. But please know that going on a date with somebody does not make you his girlfriend. It does not make him your boyfriend. It does not make you a couple. It's just a date.